Commemorate your first Notre Dame game or that of a friend or family member with a Notre Dame Football Heritage Project certificate. Visit ndcertificate.com to learn more.
The Fighting Irish of Notre Dame will look to win its fourth game in a row as they travel to Baltimore to face the 3-6 midshipmen of the Naval Academy this Saturday at M&T Bank Stadium. Hello, I'm Len Clark of Irish Illustrated, joined by Phil Houk of Fighting Irish Preview. Thank you for joining us as we talk Notre Dame football. Phil, a big win for the Fighting Irish this past weekend and a signature win for Coach Marcus Freeman as the Fighting Irish basically eliminated Clemson from the college football playoff program.
Yeah, Len, do you really want to get the attention of Notre Dame fans is write an article that's tagline is it took Brian Kelly over 10 years to do it, and it took Marcus Freeman 10 games to do it. It was a remarkable – if you think about where this football team was after the Stanford loss and what the feelings were at that time around the program, and it's just almost unimaginable that they could come back with an effort like they did and so totally dominate Clemson. But I think what Notre Dame did against Clemson is they did what we thought they might be able to do all along, going back to last summer, and they finally kind of put it together. We never thought Notre Dame was going to be a great passing team, and they're not. But, boy, they do a lot of things really well, and they did them all to Clemson last Saturday night.
Well, just a magical night at Notre Dame Stadium, and it was just the night of the Fighting Irish. But, Phil, in addition to that big win for the program, it was also a big boost for recruiting, and we're going to bring in Irish Illustrated's recruiting analyst Kevin Sinclair. Kevin, how big of a win was it from Notre Dame from a recruiting standpoint?
You know, it was massive. You know, they opened up 0-2, and then of course the loss to Stanford really sort of compounded that from a recruiting perspective. That's when these bad losses are adding up, right? And I think that's part of why there wasn't like a real blockbuster visitor list on the weekend for Clemson. But I'll tell you, the recruits who were there, last Saturday at Notre Dame, Notre Dame has picked up a commitment from a cornerback, Carson Hobbs, just this morning, who was at the game on Saturday with his whole family. His whole family are Notre Dame fans. He goes to Archbishop Moeller, which is, Jerry Faust and Tony Hunter and, so many Notre Dame alumni, were at that Cincy school once as well. So, aside from that, there was a 2023 slot receiver named Caleb Smith out of Frisco, Texas. He was on campus for the weekend, left with, the Irish really high. I did a bit of digging on him on the weekend. He's a 4-4 runner. He's a point guard, a center fielder, and a slot receiver, and a kick returner. And, I like how all that sort of adds up. And he's a great student, which, certainly helps with Notre Dame as well. So, and just one more I'd add is a 4-star running back in Aeneas Williams. He's a 2024 class guy, Alabama, Ohio State, all pursuing him. Looks like Notre Dame could seal the deal with him very shortly as well. He spent time with the other commits like CJ Carr, Cam Williams over the weekend. Seems to mesh well with them. So wouldn't be surprised if they landed him as well.
Well, an exciting night from a recruiting standpoint. Kevin, how can individuals follow your good work on irishillustrated.com? And when's your next podcast?
Yes, actually, we just had our recruiting podcast with me and Tim Priester yesterday. You can find that on the front page at Irish Illustrated, which is where you can find me, of course. And then also I'm on Twitter at Kevin Sinclair _ on Twitter.
Thank you, Kevin. We'll talk to you down the road.
Thanks, Kevin.
That's Kevin Sinclair, Irish Illustrated recruiting analyst. So, Phil, let's just put the Clemson win to bed, and a nice transition into talking to Coach Marcus Freeman today. A big win, but that was yesterday. You need to move forward. I had a chance to ask Coach Marcus Freeman a question. Actually, it was based off a comment that Drew Pine made this past week. He quoted Conor McGregor by saying, if you go to sleep on a win, you'll wake up with a loss. I asked that to Coach Marcus Freeman about not only the physical preparation for the Naval Academy, but being prepared mentally after a big win and keeping that momentum going. Here's what the head coach of the Fighting Irish had to say.
Wins are are short-lived around here, especially during the middle of a season. And it's the same thing after a loss, in that you have to move forward. You have to learn from every opportunity you can from the game, but understand the next opponent is on the horizon. And so, defensively, it's pretty easy to move forward because it's a totally different offense that you have to prepare for. Offensively, it's the ability to turn on the film and say, okay, this defense does some different things. They're really good at stopping the run. It's another challenge. And so I think our team understands that we're on a destination for improvement. We have to continue to find ways to get better. And the win versus Clemson cannot be the ceiling of this football program or of this season. We have to continue to improve. And so that's been the challenge, is to, continue to stay focused and not let praise or criticism really sway them one way or the other in how they work, and to not let a victory or defeat sway them one way or the other in terms of how to work, but to continue to understand how hard and intentional we have to work to improve. And we've had a really good week of practice, and we'll go out there and have another good day, hopefully today. And we've got a tough opponent on Saturday. We've got to be ready to.
And Phil, that's right from the head coach, Marcus Freeman. You can't take that win against Clemson and think it's going to carry you into the next week. They're back to work. They're getting ready for Navy, but it's Navy. It's a tough game.
Well, it's a tough game, but I think in some ways it can work to Notre Dame's advantage, that they have to completely shift gears to get ready for Navy. So that's going to have Notre Dame, the team's attention. They have to completely change their mindset. They can't be thinking like they did going into the Navy game, or preparing for really every other team on their schedule so far, and really for the rest of the season after this, because Navy is that much different of a challenge, going up against that triple option, going against a team that plays precisionally good special teams. They're small, but they're mighty in many ways. And they're 3-6. But Navy does some things very, very well. They're holding teams to less than 3 yards per carry against the run. And, of course, that's Notre Dame's strength. So I think those sorts of things will have this team's attention, getting ready for the option offense. That's a completely different mindset, as I said. And I think that will also have this team's attention. So I don't think the letdown is as big a factor as it might have been normally after a big win like they had last week against Clemson.
Phil, as you well know, this is my favorite game of the year. The tradition, just the fight of the Navy team. Every one of the players on the Navy roster is going pro. They're going pro for the United States of America, and that makes me sleep very well at night. But I'm also afraid of this because it's the most physical game of the year for the Fighting Irish. And the biggest thing that could really hurt this program right now are key injuries. And so the big thing is to jump out to a lead and get some players some playing time. You mentioned the strength of the Fighting Irish running the football, but Navy's not on paper that good at defending the pass. Is this a game where the wide receivers and quarterback Drew Pine actually gets their game untracked?
Well, Navy's 119th, I think, in the country against the pass, giving up 275 yards per game. And so, yeah, but that's not a strength of Notre Dame. But what is a strength of Notre Dame is thrown to the tight end. Well, why can't Michael Mayer have a big game? And I think he just might. And maybe Drew Pine can get on track and get back to some of that good mojo he had going against North Carolina when he was throwing the ball down the field a little bit more. So it's a good opportunity to get the wide receivers engaged in this offense and to kind of expand the palette of what the offense can do. Agreed. But you don't have a lot of possessions when you play Navy to experiment. So Notre Dame's got to do what they do well, and that is run the football and maybe throw to the tight end and maybe mix in a few downfield passes because on average, you might get 8 or 9 shots a game when you're playing Navy because they do control the clock. They do control the tempo with their run game. Last week against Cincinnati had 8 possessions in that game. Well, you better be really, really efficient And if you're only going to have the ball 8 times, you better score 6 or 7 of those times.
Intangibles, a key element in the upcoming game against Navy. This is basically in their backyard. Baltimore and Annapolis, just a couple of miles away. All the mids will be there. It's going to be a very loud environment at M&T Bank Stadium. And the mids have tasted victory against the Fighting Irish in recent years. And so look for them to try to bring that win back to the Naval Academy. But Phil, before we go on to your picks, special teams, once again, a key factor in the win over Clemson. Brian Mason continues to do wonders in that department.
Well, almost unbelievable. Now, when we started talking about this, Len, on this show about going back to BYU right after Notre Dame at that time had a couple of blocked punts, I think 1 or 2, and we were always, wow, they've got 2 blocked punts already on a season. That's incredible. Well, they're up to 6 now. And what Brian Mason has done, I'm out of superlatives, but I will say this. He has cultivated a culture, I guess you do cultivate cultures, at Notre Dame where they're taking great pride in their contributions the players are to special teams, which is not the norm at many programs. Special teams are almost like the forgotten part of the football game. I don't really want to be a part of that. That's how most players feel, but not at Notre Dame this year, not what Brian Mason has done. And boy, you talk about something that can change the momentum of a game. Well, it has for Notre Dame several times this year. And what it did last week with the block by Jordan Patello and the return by Prince Colley, and what it did, not just on the scoreboard, getting that early score for the Irish, but what it did to that crowd, it just energized that crowd. And I don't think I said this earlier, that was the best crowd reaction and response and continued response and support I had seen in Notre Dame Stadium in at least 20 years. It was remarkable, and big plays on special teams can do that for you.
Well, last week we talked about how the fans really need to be the 12th man, and they stepped up big time. And too many fans as they stormed the field and kind of surrounded us as we were on the field as well. But you mentioned culture. Usually cultural changes take time, and it's just amazing how Notre Dame has been able to implement these cultural changes on special teams in such a short amount of time. But I guess we're in a world of emerging media and social media where change is becoming more and more rapid. I guess we should expect it in special teams and football as well.
Well, we track it, that's for sure, and we have noticed it, and it's something we are now talking about on a weekly basis. I am convinced. I was talking to Tim Priester earlier this day, and he and I have done a radio show for 26 years, and I said, Tim, I assure you in 26 years, we have never spent more than 1 or 2 minutes talking about blocked punts. And this season alone, we've probably spent at least a couple minutes every week talking about blocked punts. It's really been amazing. It's been fun to watch. It's fun to talk about. And you can only expect more because it's not just those 6 blocked punts. But if you notice on every single play now, the defenders, or I should say the protectors who are trying to protect the punter, they see Notre Dame coming, and you can see that they don't want to be there. They know that something's coming, and they're nervous, and it affects that punt no matter whether Notre Dame gets to the ball or not. And that can have a big impact on a game, and it has.
Well, we've given special times their due, but also the offensive line, the running backs, the defense, really a total team effort. So it'll be good to see if Notre Dame can get the passing game and the wide receivers.
Ben Morrison.
Definitely. We'd really talk about Ben Morrison.
I had to interrupt you. What a game by Ben Morrison last week with the 2 interceptions, the pick 6, the 96-yard return. And the best thing about his performance was 7 tackles. This kid's 18 years old. He weighs 179 pounds, and he was taking on receivers, tight ends that weighed 250 pounds, and he didn't back down a bit. There's a big star in the making in Ben Morrison, the cornerback, who really had his coming out party last week. We've been talking about him. We knew about him ever since the summer, but boy, is he something else. What a great.
Is it okay for somebody my age to have an idol who is much, much younger than me?
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Well, Phil,
I feel the same way.
Let's get to the keys to the game and then your pick. So what are the keys for a Fighting Irish victory, which will make it their 4th in a row?
Yeah, when you talk about 8 possessions in a game, you better get off to a fast start. So I'm going to, as I like to be when I pick keys, I like to get real specific and not be vague about it. Notre Dame needs to score on 2 of their first 3 possessions. If they do that, they're going to see a lot of success, but it's got to be 2 out of their first 3 right off the bat, because that will set the pace. And then this really can turn into a game that Notre Dame can dominate if they do that. They have the ability, because I think they can run on the Navy, even though Navy's been good against the run. And I think they can pass the ball on the Navy, even though Navy hasn't been very good. Navy is not good at stopping the pass. So it's possible, but you can't give Navy any reason to feel like they're in this football game. Notre Dame needs to score early, 2 out of 3, as I said. And defensively, J.D. Bertrand, I love the fact that he's in the middle of that defense, calling the shots against this option. Smart player, 12 tackles last week. He's been the leader on the field all season long. Tremendous in many ways for the Irish as a captain, a leader on and off the field. And watch him. He's a key. I think he'll have a good game, and that's going to be key for the Irish. So long as he does what he does, I think they'll be fine at stopping that option.
J.D. Bertrand epitomizes what a student athlete at Notre Dame is. When we were on the field that last defensive possession, I think he made every tackle on that possession by Clemson. So, but Phil, what is the one area that you're going to be focusing on watching the game? What is really going to intrigue your interest?
Well, I love the chess match of trying to stop the option. You know, I've been on the sidelines for lots and lots of football games through my career of broadcasting. I've stood in huddles when coaches were coaching in between series about against option teams and talking about the minute changes that you made. Option seems pretty simple. There's 3 options. Well, it's not that simple. Spacing, a few inches makes a difference. You try and get into the mesh points. I really love watching that chess match of how a defense goes about trying to disrupt the option. And that's something I'll be watching closely on Saturday.
Well, that triple option's like going to Las Vegas and watching an optical illusion. You never know where the ball is going to be. And I really love the triple option. As I said, Navy and Notre Dame, my favorite game of the year. I expect a very tough battle. But the one key that I have, Phil, is Notre Dame needs to protect the football. They've done a great job on that. No mental mistakes hardly against Clemson. But the big thing is to come out of this game unscathed. I agree with you. Jump out to an early lead. And then maybe see some players that we haven't seen a lot of this year. Give the starters a little time off, but get some experience, because you've got the last home game against Boston College coming up, and then you head out to the West Coast to take on USC.
Yeah, you've got a 3-part test ahead of you, and if you pass all 3 of those exams coming up, you're really in a position to say that this was a very successful season. 9-3 is not that great by Notre Dame standards, but it's pretty darn good. And if you can get into a good bowl game, and 9-3 will get you into a good bowl game and win that. 10-3, anytime you get to double digits on your win total, that looks really good. But Notre Dame's got to win out. That's a big task, and it starts this week.
And now we have to have the judge with his pick for the week.
Yeah, I just believe that the Notre Dame offense is going to be able to operate. I get nervous about what I saw last week, how Cincinnati, a really good team, was only scored 20 points, won 20-10 in a close game. And that's because Navy controlled the tempo and controlled the possessions. But I think Notre Dame is better than Cincinnati this year, and I think they'll do better. And I think if you look at the games, some of the better teams have scored in the 40-point range against Navy. So my pick, Notre Dame 34, Navy 14.
And I will have my pick aired in Irish Illustrated tomorrow. I am going to say it is a big game for Al Golden's defense. I have got the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame 42, Navy 0.
Whoa.
A shutout. So we shall see. Phil, always great to talk with you. We'll talk again next week, but I'll give you the final word, as we always tell the fans.
Go Irish!
Commemorate your first Notre Dame game or that of a friend or family member with a Notre Dame Football Heritage Project certificate. Visit ndcertificate.com to learn more.